Welcome back, everybody. Today's topic is going to be a little bit technical, but it's adjacent to something that may be interesting to a much broader group of people, specifically the whole GameStop Robinhood short squeeze fiasco. Today's topic is the duty of best execution, payment for order flow, and the recent FINRA notice that may signal a significant crackdown on brokerages that use this model. As always, go ahead, like, subscribe, comment. Let's put our tinfoil hats on and get started. So I joke about tinfoil hats, but the genesis of this video really goes back to a conversation that I had in the wake of, or the wake is really still going on, a conversation that I had in the immediate wake of the whole GameStop short squeeze fiasco. I had a friend, we were talking about it, and his opinion was that all kinds of illegal behind the scenes conduct had happened and that a whole lot of arrests were going to be taking place shortly. People were going to go to jail. Robinhood was going to dissolve, blah, blah, blah. Well, that has not happened. What has happened is that FINRA has issued a notice reminding firms of their duty of best execution and discussing heavily the payment for order flow model. So we're going to be talking about those three things of what is the duty of best execution, what is payment for order flow, why might those two be a little bit in tension, and what did FINRA exactly want to remind people of? We start with the duty of best execution. What is that? A broker-dealer is legally required to find the best execution reasonably available for its customers' orders. What does that mean? Well, there are basically two components. There's price, there's speed, and there's a few other things to consider, such as whether the trade may be executed at all. But essentially, number one, the opportunity for price improvement, meaning if I'm a seller, the quote's $1.50. Maybe my broker finds a place that it can sell for $1.51 and I get a price improvement. Wonderful. Or conversely, if I'm a buyer, it's quoted at $1.50. My broker finds a place where I can get it for $1.49. That's great. A broker is required to consider opportunities for price improvement when routing your order to one of its many options. We'll talk about that in a second. The other thing is the execution speed. It is better for an order to be executed quickly than to languish around and sit on the books and maybe get executed an hour later or something like that. So what does this actually mean for a broker-dealer? Well, understand for a moment that broker-dealers have many options when it comes to routing your trade, right? You hit the trade button on your, stock trading app or whatever. The stock doesn't just magically get traded. That order goes to your broker. Your broker has authorization to buy or sell the stock for you. And the broker has a number of options for where it can go. It can go to market makers. It can go to electronic communication networks, ECNs. It can go to the actual big boy stock market. It can fill the order in-house. It can do all of these things. And in weighing its options and considering which one it wants to do, which one is better, which one ought it route a particular order to, a broker-dealer is legally required to satisfy the duty of best execution in deciding among those different methods for filling your order. Now, this is something that has been applicable to brokers for a long time, so why is FINRA making a fuss about it just now? For that, we get into the second major area, which is payment for order flow. So let's talk about payment for order flow. What is this? Why do you care? Well, payment for order flow is exactly what the name suggests. It's payment made for a flow of orders. Payment from whom? Well, the market maker pays the broker to direct orders to the market maker. Why does the market maker want this? Here's how they make money. Market makers make money on the spread. So to understand this, let's think about the way that stock market bid-ask spreads work, right? Stock X, let's say it's the quote's $1. Well, to buy it, it's really maybe $1.02. And to sell it, it's really maybe 98 cents, right? So there's a small little margin in there. This is very normal. Most stocks, all stocks have a bid-ask spread. Market makers play that margin. So they get 100 buy orders and 100 sell orders, or actually thousands or millions or whatever. And that little tiny 4 cents times however many millions becomes their profit margin. So what a market maker wants is to be on both sides, is to play both sides of as many trades as possible and make money on that spread. That's why it is profitable to a market maker to have high order flow and why they might pay brokers to send order flow their way. Stated that way, you might be thinking, okay, fine, what's the problem with this? They're taking off a little piece of the spread and they're sending it to the broker. So what? Big deal. And in the abstract, in theory, I agree with you. And so does the SEC. They looked at this practice and said, hey, look, as long as it doesn't interfere with the duty of best execution and other things, there's nothing wrong with payment for order flow. It's a little bit of the spread being reallocated to compensate the broker. And maybe brokers can use this to, reduce fees, which is in fact what they've done. Hey, there's no harm in that, right? Actually, turns out there is a bit of harm in it. Here's how payment for order flow and the duty of best execution are sort of at odds, are sort of bumping against one another. So before payment for order flow really gets big, stockbrokers are compensated through commission paid by investors. They're not compensated by the market makers. They get cash commission when you buy a stock. So they don't really have any horse in the race. They don't care which market maker it gets sent to. They'll send it to whatever market, ECN market maker, whatever it may be that's going to get the best price because there's no benefit in that. They're getting paid through the commission. Payment for order flow enters. Now those incentives, formerly aligned, now the broker's incentive starts to shift. And the broker, rather than, hey, you pay me through commission, the broker is now being paid by a market maker or paid by someone who wants that order flow and may or may not be giving the best price available, may or may not be satisfying that broker's duty of best execution. This is where the tension comes from, and this is where it starts to be a problem. In the wake of payment for order flow really becoming big, and this was pioneered by a guy you may have heard of, his name is Bernie Madoff, he's famous for some other reasons. In the wake of that, the SEC looked at it and said, hey, we're not particularly a fan of this practice, but it's going to be legal because the harms that may come from a monopoly in the market maker space would be even worse than the harms that may come from payment for order flow and the kind of misaligned incentives that come from this practice. But they've kept an eye on it ever since, and it seems that maybe those chickens are about to come home to roost. So FINRA comes along this past June, a couple weeks ago, issues this Notice 21-23 reminding firms of their duty of best execution. Now, let's start with the obvious. You don't issue reminder notices for things that people are doing well. You issue reminder notices for things that people are screwing up. FINRA probably thinks that these firms are failing to fulfill their duty of best execution, just off the top, just by the name of the notice. And we have a few more indications throughout it that that's probably what they think, but we'll get into that a little bit. Reminds firms that the duty of best execution applies, reminds them that payment for order flow should not divert orders away from a solution that satisfies the duty of best execution. So if you're a firm and there's 2 or 3 market makers that all would satisfy the duty of best execution, right? Like you look at the order speed and the execution, the price, and the blah, 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 and like all these 8 factors, and they score pretty well on all of them, and you think that this satisfies your duty of best execution. Well, if you have 3 choices, you can send it to the one that pays you. But what you're not supposed to do is send it to the one that pays you and they're deficient in one of these categories, or there's another option available. And that's indeed another thing that FINRA specifically calls out in this notice is they say, look, brokers, y'all have a duty to comparison shop, right? You have to look at what other options would be available. And just because the one dude's paying you doesn't mean that you can just ignore everything else, and you have to look at what other execution options may be available in the marketplace. Read through the entire notice. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you here. We're on a time schedule. At the end of the notice, FINRA encourages the SEC to reevaluate, which is kind of a big deal, and also notes that if the SEC does not take action, then FINRA may consider a rulemaking on the duty of best execution. So I don't think you've seen the last of this. The payment for order flow models days might be numbered, and especially in light of all of the accusations flying around after the GameStop fiasco, this is one that I would definitely pay attention to. So as always, Subscribe, like, give a comment. If there's anything that's unclear, I've tried to keep this short and summary. There's a whole lot of technical detail on this topic. You could do an hour-long video on it and still not scratch the surface. Thank you guys for watching. Take care.